We all know Kamala Harris will be running for president for the Democratic Party. And Kinganda is a black channel, so I'll talk about things from my perspective and the perspective that many African Americans and those in the diaspora can appreciate. And one of the things that we have been discussing, or at least the community have been discussing, is Kamala Harris black? Now, if we look at Kamala Harris, she definitely looks like she has African lineage. And again, I have video footage from her father, who was speaking, I believe at this particular time, at Stanford University. He is a PhD economist. So let's check out this video to try to determine that.
The thing to me about the so-called debt crisis is the striking amount of public attention it has received. Judging, for instance, from the amount of newsprint and other coverage by the media that has been devoted to it, I would say it ranks second only to the coverage given to Glasnost, Perestroika, and Gorbachev.
So through the video, it is apparent to me that Kamala Harris does come from black lineage or African lineage. So at least she's 1/2 black or 1/4 black. So that on its own can be solved. But then the second question is Candice Owens black? Let me play a clip and then you tell me.
Black Americans are the only racial group in America that march to defend their criminals. The only ones. Chinese people don't do that. Japanese people don't do that. Indian people don't do that. Hispanic people don't do that. It is a uniquely Black American phenomenon to stop what we are doing to demand justice for criminals. It's idiotic. It's stupid. I've said this from the very beginning. Black Lives Matter is an idiotic movement that tells Black Americans essentially to race toward the bottom. Defend your criminals. Not only should you defend your criminals, you should condemn your professionals. Somebody make it in life, somebody become popular by living conservatively. Will you be sure to call that person a race traitor? Because if you don't want to betray your race, what you need to do is you need to celebrate debauchery, you celebrate hip hop, and you, most of all, need to celebrate criminals.
Well, Candice Owens is definitely black, but people in the pro-black community do not like Candice Owens, even if she sometimes may make a true statement or a true point. Why? Because blackness is not always what you look like. Blackness is a soul. Blackness is a culture. Blackness is a way of thought. It is a way of life. So although Candice Owens is black, it is safe to say that she does not think black. Let's look at Tim Scott talking about racism in America.
I know this is going to offend the liberal elites. Every time I say it, it offends them. But let me say it one more time. America is not a racist country. No, we're not.
Phenotypically, Tim Scott is black. He's engaged to a white woman. We cannot say he's not black, but we don't believe he thinks like a black person. He doesn't have the soul of a black person. His culture, standing up for his people. Some people may even call him a sellout. So although he is black, he doesn't talk with a black mind. But let me play a clip of somebody we would all consider to be black. Dr. Amos Wilson.
For instance, take educational psychology. To a great extent, that psychology is built around the white middle-class child. But if you take that psychology and go into the majority of schools in our urban areas, you don't find the white middle-class child there. So you have a teacher who perhaps has been educated in terms of that psychology, running into children or having to deal with the classroom of children. And the child she's been taught to deal with is not even in the classroom to begin with. So, of course, this creates a great disparity in what she's learned, what she has, or he expects to go on in the classroom and what actually occurs.
Now, Dr. Amos Wilson is black. He's not even as dark as Tim Scott is, but we would all assume that he is black, correct? Based on he thinks with a black mind. Let's look at Dr. Claud Anderson, who is mulatto, the historical boule class looking, typing, and acting kind of person that we see in Black America. Would we say that Dr. Claud Anderson is black?
Economic structure in the simplest form would be a Japantown, a little Korea, a little Italy, a little Havana, which means where black folk would do exactly the same thing everyone else is doing. The reason we never had an economic structure in the country for black folk is for three reasons. One, we never had a national plan and a commitment to do it. Two, is that whites are boycotting black communities, and three, blacks are boycotting their own communities. And that's why you'll never see a white person get in his car, go down to a black neighborhood on a Saturday morning, get out and go into a black store and buy anything made by a black person. But neither will you see any Asians coming out of Chinatown, going into a black community buying anything. Everybody supports their own structure except black folk. That's why out of 36 million black folk, after 400 years in this country, you do not have one single solitary black business district in the entire United States. That is naivete, it is insultive, and it's grossly offensive to black folk because you're creating problems for yourselves by not belling up to the bar and accepting responsibility of amassing wealth and capital, creating economic basis, creating an entrepreneur class, creating businesses, creating jobs that will hire your own people, creating money to take care of your own public services, your lights, your gas, your streets.
How do black people start doing all those things if 98% of the wealth is in the hands of the white power elite?
We started working that very simple. We start where we are. We are right now amassing for disposable purposes something like about $380 billion annually. We're about the 9th richest nation on earth. But unfortunately, that money is dissipated through our fingers.
Now, based on Dr. Claud Anderson's look, he's even lighter than Kamala Harris. But Dr. Claud Anderson talks and speaks and has the soul of a person who loves his people. He's thinking with a black mind. That's different. And you can be black by your phenotype, but your mindset also has to be black. That completely makes you an African American in the eyes of many people. Let's go to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris went to an HBCU. She went to Howard University. She understands the struggle of black people. But what does Kamala Harris say about reparations?
Do you support reparations for black people?
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination, segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm gonna do something that's only gonna benefit black people. No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country, right?
And I want to go back to Afro Think Tank, who was a light-skinned black person who we differ on the subject, but he also has a black mind, although we disagree with the politics of today. But he accuses me and many other people who are against Kamala Harris. He says this:
Donald Trump is not for black people, and that the Republican Party is a white Christian ethno-national political organization that hides Christian white nationalism and ethno identity. And since you, I don't know, O'Shea, you're in Africa, all right? You don't have to deal with the consequences so much what happens here. I don't know what's going on with you, O'Shea, and the rest of you reasonably smart individuals that think that this is the opportunity to protest and not make a decision that should be a common sense decision to support Kamala Harris, the black woman, right? The black woman, because right now you guys are participating in colorism because it's convenient for you.
Now, let me get to Dr. Umar Johnson, who is going to make some extremely good points about someone like Kamala Harris.
And on the other side of the aisle, with our Asian American, South Asian American, occasionally black candidate Kamala Harris, she sat in the White House with President Biden for 4 years and watched him pass an anti-Asian hate bill. She watched him pass an anti-transgender hate bill. She watched him give billions of dollars to Ukraine and Afghanistan. She watched him purge and gentrify black people out of Chicago and New York, among other cities, because we now know that there are migrant crises growing in other cities. And she did nothing. And this is after she said on an interview that she can't do anything just for black people. Well, if you can't do anything just for black people, Vice President Harris, how was it possible? Excuse me, how is it possible for you guys to do something just for gays, just for Asians, just for Native Americans, just for migrants. Complete contradiction.
Now let me come back and sum it all the way up. Kamala Harris, if she was truly black, her phenotype could pass the test. We're not debating that. We have people in the community like Langston Hughes, who it's debated what his sexuality was. They've been people like Elaine Locke, who was a complete person in the LGBTQ or homosexual at that time. Bayard Rustin, who was gay. And those people historically were in a more tumultuous time where African Americans have overlooked their sexuality and still respected them because of their mentality. Even though Bayard Rustin was mostly involved with white men, Frederick Douglass can be also another case. Louis Farrakhan, who was a Caribbean but leads the Nation of Islam, is another case. The one thing that pro-blacks cannot explain is their support for Kamala Harris when she's not talking black or behaving black or being receptive to the community that she's benefited off of. She understands the black struggle. How do we know that? Because blacks are minorities. We have Juneteenth, we have HBCUs. Because we couldn't go to schools with whites, Kamala Harris understands that African Americans are #FBA or #ADOS, still at the bottom of the country, but still, she doesn't believe that reparations is something that is for the community, although she understands the community. That is why Kamala Harris isn't black. It's not what you look like, it's what you think. And that's why we can look at Tim Scott and look at Candace Owens and the rest of these guys who talk like that, and we consider them not to be black, even though they are black. You have to have some participation and you have to have some input that uplifts and helps your community get ahead of another community. But Kamala Harris is a grifter. One minute she's Indian, the next minute she's black. The only thing that she wants to uplift is her. And then you get Pan-Africans or pro-blacks who want to support that, but damn it, tell me any other community who would let them do that. Even Mr. Vivek, who is an Indian, has this to say about that.
He doesn't.
You're not just going to support your fellow Indian because she's an Indian?
Well, I would say that one thing's actually funny you bring that up in the, I believe we're all American, we got to vote in policy, of course. A lot of the Indian American community is a little bit disappointed or a little bit offended, at least at the fact that she doesn't really own that part of her identity anymore. In the way she did before, right? I'm not saying that. I'm just
she owns both.
I'm don't blame the messenger, but I'm telling you, you can take it as a fact that a good, at least in my read of it, I think a lot of Indian Americans do have a little bit of disappointment about that. My whole view is I don't like identity politics, period, right? One direction or another.
The fact is, anybody can be black and get support from blacks as long as they look black. They don't even have to talk black. As long as they fare in consideration to what somebody else considers to be a racist, they can get black support and then go around and basically castigating anybody who has an opposite opinion. Kamala Harris isn't black because of how she behaves. That's the real theory in black society in black America. You have to actually do something and stand on something to fully be considered black. You just can't have the phenotype. That's why the saying goes, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy O'Shea Duke Jackson back at it again with another episode of The Celebrity Junk. I appreciate you for all you do. Subscribe to the bell. We're out.